Having a bit of a swig there, Paulie? What do we got? We got chai tea, water? Looking fresh.
Water with a pinch of Celtic sea salt,
Ah, yes.
uh, and just looking to
They're looking good.
wash out any berries that may or may not be caught in my teeth. Which
Yeah.
I did find. I went to, I woke up this morning with the worst neck. Like I've never
Oh,
really
really?
had neck issues, and I could not move my neck. Luckily, my best friend's a chiropractor,
Good.
and shout out to Julian Feldman. Uh, uh, and he fixed me up beautifully. But I came back from him, and I was just in the car, and I was looking at my teeth, and I was like, I berries
Oh,
everywhere.
he didn't tell you. Oh, he's one
No,
of those
no,
guys.
man. I'm
He'll
like,
just leave you
you're a
guessing.
very bad best friend.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I've blocked him. I've since blocked him, and he will no longer be receiving any calls. So,
Yeah, yeah.
shit. Well, yeah, man, it's been a while. So I suppose I always, you and I, whenever we do a podcast, we love the candidness of our conversations. But I had one that I wanted to lead us off with, because I saw you went to Huberman recently, and
Yes.
I thought I'd do like a less tangible segue into Huberman, but start off by asking like, what's something that you're big on at the moment? Like, whether it's a health and wellness tip or a book you're reading or an idea, what's something that's really kind of sparked your thought process at the moment?
Um, so they're more meta kind of concepts, but I suppose the overriding thing that I'm really, really into right now is the power of habit formation and understanding the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to stepping into that. The power of compound interest when it comes to actions, and being able to understand. I started this project, if you'd like to call it. It's called the 5 by 21 method. And it really is just about establishing a habit for 5 minutes or less on a daily basis that you persist with for 21 days. And then you reflect back upon it and you see whether it's offering value to your life. And I feel like that's a good period of time to be able to assess and also see tangible benefits into it. So that's something that I've been doing. I'm in the middle of cold exposure, and I offer different levels for people who want to get into it. I'm personally doing 1 minute for the first week of cold showers, 2 minutes second week, 3 minutes third week, and I'm offering different kind of levels for people to get into. But yeah, ultimately, it's that. From a mental perspective, I feel like so many people deprive themselves of so much value in their lives because they just are so afraid to just take that first step.
Yeah.
So that 5 minutes, and the other thing is the 5 minutes needs to be of minimal to no money spent. I know. Have you seen this? Is this?
I've never. For
It's
everyone just
like
listening, Paulie's done the thumbs up here, and
and
he keeps getting thumbs up on. If you're watching this, you can go back and watch it. But I don't understand. Can you turn that off or?
I don't think so.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I didn't turn it on.
yeah. You turned me on though.
Oh, thank you. It's kind of like the Zoom. It's like the Zoom equivalent of the U2 album being put on
Yes.
everyone's iPhone. It's
Yeah,
like I
that's
didn't
right.
ask for this.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. We'll have to roll with it anyway. Every now and then, just have to put the thumbs up here,
Yeah,
the double
see,
thumbs up. No, you're right though, mate. I think 5 minutes is it's not it's like the barrier to entry is so low. You can set the bar so low, but it is a starting point. And then I wonder, do you ever get people sort of pushing back on that and saying like, well, in a manner of speaking, what's it going to do if it's only 5 minutes? Like, what am I going to do with that?
yeah, that's a really good question, and it reminds me of a conversation I had with a client a few years ago. Um, and the client was really, really keen to start running and losing
Yep.
weight. And she's like, I'm going to run every single day for half an hour, because I know that's what's going to be the thing to get me losing weight. I was like, great. If you're passionate about running, let's do this, And I checked in with her a week later. How's it going? haven't taken a run yet. I'm like, cool. Checked in another couple of weeks later. How's it all going? I haven't put my runners on yet. I
Yeah.
was like, why don't we start with just running 1 day a week for 10 minutes? And she's like, what's running 1 day a week for 10 minutes
Right.
going to, that's not going to have an effect on my, and I'm like, well, it's going to be better than you doing absolutely nothing.
That's checkpoint.
And it just reminds me so much of the common mentality that people have in today's day and age. They think so much about what, what could be done in a perfect world, but we don't think about what's practical now, here and now.
Yeah, that's that common thing. I mean, I have it massively as well. It's like we try to fix all our problems in one day. It's like this all or nothing mentality that I don't understand too much about, and I find it hard to sort of pull it back and engage in sort of small habits consistently over time. But then what I also recognize is, like, say for me in my writing, like it's not necessarily something that I find that difficult to motivate myself to do, because it's to steal Rick Rubin's terminology, for me there's no outcome associated with it, so there's no need to perform or expect a certain result. It's just the flow of writing.
Your
But I
process.
do exactly process oriented, but I do recognize that even something as minimal, if I've got the whole day to myself, and in the calendar I put a 2 hour block to write, I feel the proportional weight of expectation than if I just put an hour block in and then ended up writing for 2 hours anyway. So it's interesting like that, because like you think about, okay, I'm just going to do 5 minutes today. I'm just going to put my shoes on perhaps. And then maybe in a month, I'll be so habitualized to putting my running shoes on, I might actually get out the door. It's the first limiting belief that comes into my mind. That's why I asked you, is like, well, why bother? It's like, this thing is trying to keep us comfortable just beyond any doubt all the time. It gets in the way.
It's like a an ingrained mindset flaw in the modern age. There's a famous quote. I'm sure you've probably heard of it. It's most people underestimate what they can do most people overestimate what they can do in 1 week and underestimate what they can do in 10 years.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it?
It's significant because we are just such, and obviously the advent of social media and the way it's completely dominating everyone's psyche, it's just creating a culture of instantaneous gratification. So we're like constantly telling ourselves we're not worth anything, our habits aren't worth anything unless they are generating a return, a very tangible return immediately, like yesterday. And
Yes.
I was reading this book. I think it's called Mastery, and there's a quote. There's a chapter on it. It's like learning to embrace the plateau.
That's awesome.
Because I find in learning something, there's this kind of immediate, initial excitement that people have when it comes to learning something new, and you're filled with vigor and you're filled with excitement, and then you get results as well, right? And because you're going from, let's say, nothing to something,
Right.
and then eventually you will get to a point where you're plateauing. And it's at that point where people just lose interest. And if you learn to, revel in the plateau.
Yes.
And it comes from the author was a Aikido, Aikido, is it?
Oh, are you talking about the little book by George Leonard?
Is it George Leonard?
Where it's a small book.
It's not a big book.
No, very small book. I feel like, is
Hang
it
on, I'll
George
tell you
Leonard?
who it was.
Yeah, let me know, because there's a quote in that book. If I think it's that book, I feel like it is that book.
Called
Um,
Mastery, and it's George Leonard. Yeah, George
yeah,
Leonard.
yeah. It's an amazing book, man.
What a book.
My one of my favorite quotes of all time comes from that book, where he's talking about um why amazing basketball players like Larry Bird and so on are the best. And he says it's because they do it every day, right? Embracing the plateau. And I think the quote is something like, practice isn't something that you do, it's something that you are. In other words, don't try to be the noun, do the verb. And if you can't do it for a lifetime, why bother doing it for a day?
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating, and it's like really reassuring. And I think everyone, especially now, should read that book,
Yeah.
because it's it's just so reaffirming. Like it's just like, be process oriented. And
Yeah.
if you're process oriented, the results will come. And it's not to say that you should persevere with everything. I mean, sometimes, it's just not worth it, and you might just be shit at something,
Right.
like which is fine
Right.
as well. But you'll still get value out of the experience of persevering for a period of time, because you'll learn something that may
Yes.
lend it to something else. But any kind of habit, you don't need to be like 6'5" to um, you know to do a habit, or
Right.
there are some things that you can be greatly benefited from being tall for, like
Totally.
being, and I'd be shit at that because I'm not tall.
Yeah, it's it. That's it. I mean, yeah, I mean, like, if you take all the guesswork out of it, I think in this day and age, I mean, it's funny, Paulie, like I am so grateful, um, and in love with the personal development industry. And yet I have a lot of, issues with it. Sometimes it's also like the bane of my existence, because to me, it emphasizes this notion that you can be better and you can improve, and you can, if you do certain things and you start to take on a growth mindset, there is a greater life waiting for you. Brilliant. But if you start to sort of peer too far over the cliff and fall, that becomes, um, the reason why you're not as successful as the top 0.001% is because of you. And it's something inherently wrong with your habits, or the way you see the world, or your past traumas that you need to heal so that you can dot dot dot. And I think what I really resonate with what you're talking about here, and again, you and I have like we're totally enamored of, Rick Rubin's work. But what I love about everything that he says in that, I've just finished reading it for the second time. For everyone, The Creative Act, beautiful book, A Way of Being.
Oh,
Um,
it's a masterpiece.
oh man, it so is, because like his whole thing is just like, at least what I took from it anyway, is like, if it's fun and it's engaging, then do it. And if it's not, then why are you just battering yourself,
And it's like the the product that you're producing, or the service that you're producing, if you're a musician, if you're creating something physical, if you're a practitioner, it's completely secondary to what is going on inside of you.
Right.
It's just a vehicle. It's like whatever the stuff is that you're doing, it's really just a semiology. It's like a symbol of growth inside of you.
Right.
So, and I feel like he really, really impresses upon that point. It's like whatever it is that you're doing, it could be just as easily something else,
Right.
because the internal mechanism that is exploding inside of you and growing and evolving is the primary focus.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly, man. Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I resonated with that so much, because for him, it is a way of being. It's a way of seeing the world. It's not necessarily about skill acquisition, becoming a better producer, or a health and wellness and life coach, or a therapist, or a writer, whatever it is. It's a way of seeing the world without having the blinders on, being so problem solution focused, being open to new experiences. And it's, gotta tell you, man, like it's hard to do that in this day and age, when our economies are designed for growth and outcomes. But I think it's ever more important as a result of that, and it takes the pressure off. Like, you think about, like, trying to write your first book, or start a new business, or think of a new product or service within your business. I think, in fact, I was thinking about you actually, man, when I was reading it, because with business, I find that it's harder for me. Maybe you have a different point of view on this, but it's harder for me to be creative in a business, because the implicit idea of a business is to provide a service that gets a certain result for someone. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, are you in conflict? Do you see a conflict there with creativity and being an entrepreneur?
I think there is. I feel like it's kind of yes and no. Like I feel like the idea generation process for me, and I'm like a serial ideas
Killer.
person. I'm like, I seriously, I like to a point where it's like chronic. I will have 3 to 5 different business ideas like a day.
But I think you were also telling me that you're struggling with a cocaine habit that might have some sort of
And heroin, yeah.
and
It's
exactly.
but you know what? They balance each other out.
They do. They do.
Um, but it's something that like and that is the creativity that sparks something in business.
Right.
And I think this is a really good kind of example of how partnerships can be really, really beneficial and useful. It's like if you have this insatiable creativity inside of you and you have this ability to be able to kind of be like this psychopathic kind of, I've got an idea here, I've got an idea there, what if we did this and what if we did that, and like, you know, 9 out of 10 of those were just rubbish.
Yep.
But if you had somebody there that was respectful and on the same page as you, and also grounded in a sense where they can be like, I love that. That is not going to work though. And they also have a systems based mentality to be able to implement all the chaos that is going inside of a creative person's brain. That can be a really, really kind of complementary relationship. So, you know, like business doesn't just need a bit like I think people sometimes, and I sometimes think about this as well. I think people sometimes feel like they need to have all of the answers
Yeah. Yeah.
and all of the solutions, but that's putting a lot of pressure on an individual to be able to say, I have a superpower, and in order for me to be able to harness that superpower, I need somebody else to ground me.
Yes, yes, beautiful, beautiful, totally. Yeah, if someone's totally about efficiency, productivity, outcomes, then they've got to have a partner who like lives in woo-woo land, you know, who just drinks mushrooms for breakfast, lives on cloud 46. Apparently the weather's pretty good out there.
Tell me about your year thus far. Tell me what's been happening with you.
Yeah, yeah. Mate, I've been taking a deeper and deeper dive into my love of existentialism. I'm reading a book at the moment called The Worm at the Core is written by 3 social psychologists who read Ernest Becker's Pulitzer Prize winning work 1974, I think. People who love Becker are probably going to berate me on that one. Called The Denial of Death. It's an amazing book. It is here somewhere, but Becker's philosophy was that every single thing that motivates a human being is predicated on an unconscious defense mechanism for their fear of death. The entire hero myth, you know, becoming immortal, leaving a legacy behind, is so that their life won't be for nothing and they'll be able to run as far away as possible from the terror that returning to oblivion arises and evokes within us.
Mm.
And you know, it's so much that I read that book and it blew my skull off my skin. It
What was the
was
name of the book again?
The Denial of Death. The Denial. I'll see if I can find. I know it's here somewhere. Because I only here it is. Denial of Death, winner of the Pulitzer Prize, right there. Pretty small book, very, very deep, sort of Freudian, unconscious psychoanalytic stuff. So, because I think
Okay.
at the time, the Freudian psychoanalytic theory was still the dominant theory of psychology, even in psychiatry. A lot of psychiatrists were still sort of grounded in, you know, unconscious desires, sexual impulses, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they became sort of more pharmaceutical. But the one limitation of Becker's work in that book was the lack of scientific evidence. And these guys, and I've got this on Kindle, but these guys fell in love with the book and have been studying what they called terror management theory for the past quarter of a century, and now they have a shit ton of evidence to really demonstrate that a lot of what motivates a human being is predicated on running away from the fear of death, and
Yeah.
and it's grounded in we do it in two major ways. So the first way is that we um, uh, uh, connect to our cultural worldview. So we become good people through a cultural lens. So, you know, in this culture, it's all about growth, becoming the best version of yourself, or it's, you know, having a good profession, you know, a government regulated profession like a psychologist or a lawyer or a physician, you know, and that bolsters one's self-esteem. The other one is self-esteem, where admiration for oneself because who I am and what I do is in alignment with what is culturally deemed to be good and worthy. Without that stuff, we feel, and Ernest Becker says, you know, if without that, you sort of stand naked in the storm of life. And exposure, and Irvin Yalom said, exposure to the fear of death is like staring at the sun. You know, if you stare at it too long, it starts to hit you back as well. But just a really powerful book. Both of them are really powerful. There are some examples like they did some studies where there are if you so they got like a bunch of creationist Christians and a bunch of evolutionary scientists, and they both got them to read a script that sort of denigrated or really showed evidence of the fact that each other's belief systems are wrong, and then they got them to do like a word fill-in questionnaire at the end of that. And the creationists, when they read theories that sort of proved creationism to be wrong, they filled in more words that were associated with their own death than the control group. So belief systems, you know, all the stuff that we would sort of know to be, you know, what sort of makes us a self. When you remove all of that shit, we start to get pretty worried about dying. So amazing stuff, man. I'm pretty interested in it.
Interesting stuff, man. That sounds
It's
like a
deep.
trip. Sounds
It's
like
a
a
trip.
trip.
It is a trip, but no, it's good. We're planning on moving back to the south. We've spent too long up here in the north in the heat,
Yeah,
and
so
then
I asked you about that. I asked you whether you're somebody who appreciates seasons or if you're somebody who could just kind of and asking you this question, like I was trying to ask you as if you were somebody who hadn't lived in Queensland yet.
right.
So
Oh yes, yes, yes.
so it's like, because for me personally, I'm like, I glorify Queensland and the climate because I think I could live in crazy stinking hot all year long.
On the sun.
I would be happy to holiday on the sun.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. In close proximity to the sun.
Yes, very
Yeah,
much so.
yeah. Well, so have you
Um,
always been like that?
yeah, I just love heat. I just love the heat. I like being naked. I like, I just like
Just with
wearing.
the you love being naked with the Ernest Pecker out.
I just love it. And so does Nat. Like Nat loves it as well. Edie, our eldest, does not like. She says, "I love the cold. I
Oh
love
yeah.
cold weather." I'm like, well, if we end up moving to Queensland, tough titties, Edie.
You will not be coming.
We make the rules, mate.
We will be leaving. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny. I mean, I was always kind of impartial to it. I think moving up here, we were, you know, keen to try something different. But the winter's beautiful. Like it's really beautiful. It's perfect weather. You
Like, what are
know,
you talking? Like 20 degrees
20
or?
degrees, no wind, coolish at night, but you can still get by in sort of shorts and a t-shirt, but you can wear longer clothes, warmer clothes if you want to. But for us, the humidity in the summer is like genuinely unbearable. You know, and it's fine if you're someone who has an who has an active job, is on his feet all the time, or loves going to the beach. But I'm such a fucking nerd. All I do is sit inside and read, and then I write, and then I do my job. You know, and I love that. I really, really love that
Yeah.
way of living. And I think as I've sort of cemented that way of living more and more, I've been able to see just how much that me being in the sun, you know, is not a thing. Not that I'm a vampire, like try to get like blue light exposure and so on in the morning and that, but Yeah, I think moving down to wine country in Adelaide might be nice. Because we
Oh,
do like drinking a nice McLaren Vale. So
why why not, mate?
yeah,
Absolutely. And Adelaide Hills and that whole area is so stunning. Like Nat and I did a road trip in South Australia um, a few years ago now, but like
yeah.
it's just amazing. So how's the riding going? Like, are you what kind of discipline are you on when it comes to riding daily?
Yeah, so I was because I'm still doing uni at the moment. I'm working through my master's degree, and I've sort of had to try to find a way to prioritize both things there. Loving the master's degree with my writing. I'm writing two books at the moment. One is a novel, which is actually proving to be quite difficult because I haven't written fiction since I was 13, you know. But this is the book that I always wanted to write, the fiction novel. It's a book that I legitimately started when I was 10. I've got the first draft that's dated 2003.
Wow.
And yeah, it was at the time it was called Hope and Faith. It was a book about a young boy who lost his parents in a car accident and lived with his grandparents and was trying to find a way through bullying and grief through high school. So I've always been interested in the bigger ideas in life.
That's early, dude.
It's early. Actually, I won a competition in 2005, so I was 12. So that was 2 years after that. It was a short story competition. I won the state competition. Sorry, I was a finalist. I'm not going to, you know, not a grandiose thing. I was a finalist in the state competition for a 800-word short story. It was called Dancing with a Memory, about an elderly man who had lost his wife, was rummaging in an attic, and then had found a photo of her dancing that he hadn't seen in decades. And then as a result, he sort of passed away in that memory, dancing with her as well. So, like I said, I've always been interested in this sort of stuff. For whatever reason, it's grasps me and isn't letting go. But the fiction novel, to sort of segue back into it, is sort of building off the idea that I started with when I was 10 years old but it's changed now. It's sort of like how a therapist who has his own shit and a client who's working through a series of things which I won't give away wind up sort of healing each other through an intricate process that is surprising to the both of them. Which, and you and I, coach, therapist, psychologist, healer, whatever you want to call yourself, if you're in the helping profession, hopefully you can engage with this. And one of the things that you and I both connected with, Paulie, when we first met each other as CrossFit coaches, was that we saw ourselves as fellow travelers with the people we were working with. There was never an authoritative sort of mentory thing. It was both being mentored. And the more you learn about someone's story, the more you change who you are. That's why it's such a beautiful industry to be in. So
I couldn't agree more, man. Yeah, it's a beautiful space to be in, and there are, like you said, there's a lot of there's just a lot of varying colors in the industry, but like
yeah.
you can focus on the paths that you want to take. Like anything,
Right.
we live in a world now where there is so much information just coming at us left, right, and center. It's really, really hard to be able to decipher, but that becomes a challenge because I remember, and I am of an age where I do remember very clearly the internet not existing
Yeah.
at all, like
Yeah.
at all. I went through high school where I had Alta Vista and dial-up internet.
Morse
I don't
code.
even pretty close.
You
And
had a quill
yeah, a quill and pen, carrier
and a
pigeon.
carrier pigeon.
And I remember, like Encyclopedia Britannica's was the number one resource for information,
Right.
and everyone had an entire wall devoted to an Encyclopedia Britannica, and that's
Yeah.
how you got your information. So we have
Yeah.
our issues are not accessing information; it's accessing the right information for us.
Mate, it's always a pleasure to chat, and we'll have
Absolutely,
many
same.
more as always.
Always.
We never know where they're quite going to go, but I always learn something, and yeah,
Likewise, Tommy.
beautiful. All right, mate. All right, guys. Hey, talk to you soon. Paulie, any final words?
Be kind to each other.
I like that.
And I'm going to be kind to you, Tommy, because I love being kind to you.
I appreciate that. And I hope you will. I'll be expecting that kindness.
um, love you, baby. And let's do this again sometime soon.
Always, always. All right, guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.